Picture this, you're sitting at your desk, that little white pouch under your lip, and your heart racing as nicotine floods your system. You tell yourself it's for focus, for productivity, to lock in on your work. But a part of you knows it's not healthy. And scientifically, every hit of nicotine is like taking out a loan against your brain's natural ability to concentrate, and the interest rates are getting higher every single day. In the next few minutes, I'm about to show you 7 scientifically backed methods that will give you laser focus without having to sacrifice your health using artificial focus that is slowly wrecking your body. Most entrepreneurs are looking for the real-life limitless pill, the one Bradley Cooper took in the movie and unlocked insane focus. But the problem is that while you might find a lot of mental enhancers and questionable pills to help you focus, this slowly turns your brain into mashed potatoes over time. It simply means that if you're relying on things like nicotine to concentrate, your dopamine system is completely screwed. And most entrepreneurs think they have a focus problem, but they actually have a dopamine problem. You see, nicotine hijacks this system by artificially spiking your dopamine, making everything else pale in comparison. It's like turning up the brightness on your phone to maximum, which automatically makes everything else look dim by comparison. Think of dopamine like the fuel gauge in your car. When it's full, everything feels engaging and interesting. But when it's empty, even the most important tasks feel boring and impossible to focus on. You see, every time you reach for your phone, check a notification, or pop a ZYN, you're teaching your brain that the current task isn't rewarding enough, which means that you're literally programming yourself to need external stimulation to focus. But there's a way to reset this system naturally, and it starts from something called root cause dopamine reset. For the first 90 minutes of your day, no phone, music, or stimulation. Your brain is in a state that is called reward calibration mode, and whatever you expose it during this time period sets your dopamine baseline for the entire day, which means that the meaningful work that actually matters will feel impossible. So instead, do some exercise, journaling, or complete your morning routine. This will keep your dopamine sensitivity high, making work feel way more engaging later. The next thing you need to implement is what I call the boring rule, because your ability to focus is directly tied to something called your frustration tolerance. This simply means that the more comfortable you are with boredom, the easier it becomes to focus on difficult tasks. So every single day, you need to deliberately do one thing that's boring and sucks. For example, work out in complete silence, take a long walk outside without any music or podcasts, or even sit and stare at a wall for 10 minutes on your own. And as a result of practicing the rule of getting bored daily, this will in a way trick your brain to enjoy doing hard, focused work. But here's where most people mess this up completely. They'll follow the 90-minute morning rule, but then they'll check their phone or open random tabs while working. Every time you do this, you're giving your brain a dopamine hit that makes your actual work feel boring by comparison. It's like eating candy right before dinner. It completely ruins your appetite for the main course. So what you need to do to stay locked in while working so that you don't rely on external stimulation to focus is to first and foremost put your phone in another room. Then use website blockers. When you feel the urge to check something unrelated, write it down on your notepad or an app like Todoist instead of acting on it. This will allow you to keep your focus for the task at hand. Now that you've reset your dopamine baseline naturally, you have the option to start leveraging real-life limitless pills. Or in other words, dopamine amplifiers that will enhance your focus, attention, and alertness so you can forget the world exists and get lost in deep work for hours without ever burning out. And all without getting addicted, not being able to sleep at night, or life-threatening side effects. And I'm not talking about your typical gas station nootropics or sketchy research chemicals that promise to turn you into Einstein overnight. These are compounds with solid research backing that work by supporting your brain's natural neurotransmitter production instead of hijacking it like stimulants do. Think of it like this. Stimulants are like putting rocket fuel in a Honda Civic. You'll go super fast for a while, but you're going to blow up the engine. These dopamine amplifiers are like upgrading to a Ferrari. More power, but built to handle it. The first compound is saffron extract. It turns out that saffron isn't just an expensive spice that turns your rice into something bougie. It contains compounds called crosins that increase dopamine availability in the prefrontal cortex, the brain region for executive function and sustained attention. A few studies even found that it can be as effective as Adderall or Ritalin for ADHD. But saffron, instead of artificially spiking dopamine dopamine like Adderall or nicotine, it prevents dopamine breakdown, allowing your brain to maintain steady levels naturally. You want to take about 30 milligrams of standardized saffron extract in the morning with food. But saffron works even better when combined with this next substance that targets a completely different pathway and has been used by Russian cosmonauts to maintain peak mental performance in space. What I'm talking about is rhodiola rosea, an adaptogen that helps your brain maintain optimal neurotransmitter levels under stress. Think of it as your brain's personal bodyguard against mental fatigue. The active compound, selidroside, has been studied extensively by Russian researchers who needed their cosmonauts and elite athletes to perform under extreme stress without cracking. Rhodiola increases the sensitivity of dopamine receptors while simultaneously reducing cortisol. It's exactly like turning up the volume on your brain's reward system while turning down the stress noise. Take 300 to 400 milligrams of standardized rhodiola extract on an empty stomach 30 minutes before your most demanding work. The third compound in this stack is particularly interesting because it targets the exact same receptors that nicotine hijacks, but in a completely different way that actually builds your focus capacity instead of depleting it. It's something called catuaba bark. Catuaba bark comes from the Brazilian rainforest and contains alkaloids that modulate dopamine reuptake, essentially keeping dopamine active in your synapses longer without the artificial spike and crash of stimulants. Unlike nicotine, which floods your system with artificial stimulation and then crashes you harder than a Windows 95 computer, catuaba provides steady, sustained dopamine support that actually builds over time. It's like the difference between sprinting and marathon running. Stimulants make you sprint until you collapse, but catuaba trains you to run marathons. You want to take 500 milligrams of standardized catuaba bark extract twice a day with meals. But there's one more supplement specifically designed for high-performing entrepreneurs who need to think clearly under pressure. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's called Notable Focus, and it's a synergistic blend of research-backed compounds that work together like a perfectly tuned orchestra. This combination works by supporting multiple neurotransmitter pathways simultaneously, creating what researchers call relaxed alertness, the perfect neurochemical state for deep work. You need to either take one capsule dumped under your tongue and held for about 10 minutes, or 2 capsules 30 minutes before focused work sessions. Now, while these dopamine amplifiers are powerful, they won't work optimally if you're depleting the one neurotransmitter that nicotine has been artificially boosting for months or years. And most people have no idea that their focus problem is actually many times an acetylcholine problem. While dopamine makes you want to do something, acetylcholine is what actually helps you do it with laser precision. Think of dopamine as the gas pedal and acetylcholine as the steering wheel. You absolutely need both to get where you're going. What supplement and drug companies don't want you to know about nicotine is that it doesn't just mess with your dopamine, but it primarily works by binding to acetylcholine receptors in your brain. Acetylcholine is your brain's focus neurotransmitter. It's responsible for sustained attention, memory formation, and cognitive flexibility. It's literally what allows you to lock in and get lost in deep work for hours. But when you use nicotine regularly, you're essentially outsourcing acetylcholine production to an external substance. And this is like hiring someone else to do your push-ups, which means that, sure, the work gets done, but your muscles get weaker. Over time, your brain reduces its natural acetylcholine production, leaving you dependent on nicotine just to achieve normal focus levels. This means that you're actually not enhancing your performance anymore, you're just trying to get back to baseline. So what you need to do at this stage is to fix the natural production of the focus neurotransmitter acetylcholine so that you can focus better without taking nicotine. And to do this, you'll have to put in place a set of protocols and tools that have been used by mental workers and top performers for decades to improve cognitive output and focus. The first tool is called alpha GPC. Alpha GPC is like sending reinforcements to your brain's focus army. It's a choline compound that crosses the blood-brain barrier and directly increases acetylcholine production. What's scary that most people don't know is that nicotine depletes acetylcholine, leading to worse focus and brain fog over time, which puts you into a dark loop cycle of using ZYNs to focus, depleting your acetylcholine, not being able to focus and function optimally without ZYNs, and then using more and more. In one study, participants who took 600 milligrams of alpha GPC daily showed significantly faster reaction times and improved attention span without the jittery crash that comes from stimulants. So the best way to use alpha GPC to boost focus and mental performance is by taking about 300 to 600 milligrams in the morning 30 minutes before mentally demanding work, ideally on an empty stomach for maximum absorption. The next tool is vitamin B1. Vitamin B1 is like the spark plug in your brain's focus engine. Without it, you can have all the choline in the world, but your brain will not be able to efficiently convert it into acetylcholine. B1 also plays a crucial role in REM sleep, which is the phase of your sleep where your brain consolidates memories, clears metabolic waste, and also recharges your mental focus batteries for the next day. Take 100 to 300 milligrams of benfotiamine, which is a more bioavailable form of B1, with breakfast. Now, this next tool is not something you take, but something you do, and it's a game changer for your focus. It's to optimize your sleep routine to refill your acetylcholine pools. You see, your brain replenishes acetylcholine during sleep, particularly during REM phases. If your sleep sucks, your focus the next day is destroyed before you even wake up. So what you need to do is to avoid bright overhead lights 2 to 3 hours before bed because they suppress melatonin production and signal your brain that it's wake time. No stimulating work in the last 1 to 2 hours because it keeps acetylcholine levels elevated when they should be declining. And your bedroom needs to be cold, dark, and silent so that you stay asleep all the way throughout the night and get maximum REM sleep. And with your acetylcholine system optimized, there's one more technique grounded in neuroscience that can instantly create the perfect neurochemical cocktail for focus. I call this technique cold lock activation, and it's the strategic combination of 3 focus boosting behaviors. And the way you implement it is, first of all, you want to do 12 minutes per week total of cold exposure, split in multiple 3 to 4 minute sessions. When you do cold exposure, it triggers up to a 250% increase in dopamine that lasts for hours, not minutes like caffeine or nicotine. It also increases norepinephrine, which enhances alertness and creates a state of calm focus. But timing is everything. Don't do it daily because you will deplete your dopamine levels and it will actually have adverse effects. While you're doing cold exposure, it's important that you sit in complete silence for the entire time. No music, no phone, no input whatsoever. When you reduce sensory input, you minimize what researchers call dopamine leakage and maintain that heightened state created by cold exposure. This silence allows your nervous system to settle into a state of calm alertness, which is the perfect neurochemical environment for deep, focused work. Then immediately after cold exposure, you implement what I call the visual focus trigger. Your eyes and brain are directly connected through something called the superior colliculus. When you focus your visual attention at a single point, it activates your prefrontal cortex and increases acetylcholine release, which allows you to have increased focus for other tasks. So right after your cold exposure, spend about 2 to 3 minutes focusing on a single point. It can be a spot on the wall, a candle flame, or even your thumb held at arm's length. This combination trains your brain to enter focus modes at will. But even following the most powerful focus habits won't help if you're constantly getting distracted with the wrong sounds. In fact, there is a technique that was invented in 1897 by a Russian psychologist to make dogs salivate on command. But you can actually leverage this exact technique to condition your brain for peak performance. It's called auditory anchoring, and the way it works is by tricking your brain into automatic focus modes by pairing a specific sound with deep work until your brain reflexively switches into flow state when it hears that audio. First of all, to do this, it's important that you have no music while working. I know that you will probably think that music helps you focus, but actually music competes with your prefrontal cortex for processing power. Instead, you want to use consistent ambient sounds. Listen to 20 or 40 hertz binaural beats because that kind of music allows your brain to switch into some of the most optimal brainwave activities for peak focus and attention. But you want to make sure that you only use that specific sound for deep work, because only then you'll train your brain to enter deep work mode at will. But even if you apply all of these 5 techniques, I can almost guarantee that there's this other substance you're using every day that slowly destroys your productivity. The worst thing is that some of the biggest companies in the world spend billions of dollars to get you to take this drug, and as a result, today, 61% of the world uses it daily. This drug hijacks your dopamine and over time makes it impossible for you to function without it in pretty much the same way ZYNs do. And surprise, surprise, I'm talking about coffee. Now, most entrepreneurs use caffeine as a crutch. They need it to just feel normal. But there is a method called precision caffeine cycling that lets you take the focus enhancing benefits of caffeine without the toxic side effects so that you can use it when you want to operate 10 times above baseline instead of needing it every day like a coffee zombie to function. function and wake up. What you want to do is to first of all limit caffeine to 2 or 3 times per week maximum, only on your most mentally demanding days. This prevents tolerance buildup, dopamine depletion, and maintains caffeine's performance-enhancing effects. Identify your 2 to 3 most cognitively demanding days each week and use caffeine only on these days, staying completely caffeine-free on the others. Also, never consume caffeine within the first 90 minutes of waking, because during this window, your body is naturally clearing adenosine from your system. If you block this process with caffeine, you'll experience a massive crash later. Wait 90 minutes after waking, then consume your coffee. This allows your natural awakening process to complete while maximizing caffeine's benefits. And the last and most important rule to precision caffeine cycling is to never consume caffeine within 10 hours of your intended bedtime. You see, caffeine has a quarter life of about 10 to 12 hours. This means that if you drink 300 milligrams of caffeine at 10 a.m., by 10 p.m., you still have about 75 milligrams in your bloodstream, which is the equivalent of about 1 cup of coffee. And while you might feel like you're able to fall asleep just fine, in reality, your REM sleep and sleep efficiency will be destroyed, leading to lower energy and lower focus the next day for the things that actually matter, which means that you're becoming dumber and dumber every day without even knowing it. But amongst all the coffee, sleep optimizations, and focus habits, there is this one stupidly simple daily action that is probably the most important of all things we walked through so far. As a matter of fact, the world's most productive people, from Darwin to Einstein to modern entrepreneurs like Alex Hormozi, all did this to be able to unlock unbelievable states of focus and creativity. It's a principle called neuro workspace. The one thing that all of these world-leading minds did was that they all had designated spaces for their most important work. At the time, they didn't really know why they did it, but it's a practice deeply rooted in neuroscience, and if you do it correctly, it turns your brain into a focus machine. You see, your brain uses a process called neuroplasticity to form strong neural associations between environments and mental states. For example, when you go to a restaurant, you probably want to eat. When you go to the gym, you probably want to exercise. When you go to the cinema, you probably want to grab popcorn and watch a movie. In the same way, when you consistently do focused work in the same space, that environment then becomes a trigger for deep concentration. But when you use the same space for multiple activities, work, entertainment, eating, or sleeping, your brain struggles to distinguish between contexts. It's like trying to use the same exact key for your car, for your office, and for your house. Nothing works efficiently. The neural workspace leverages this principle by creating a dedicated environment that your brain naturally associates with your most important focused work. You want to use your office or workspace for only one thing, and that is work. No eating, not entertainment, no scrolling. That way, every time you sit down, open your laptop, and put your headphones on, your brain literally flips a switch and you enter flow state in seconds. And mastering these 7 methods will allow you to master your focus without depending on external stimulants like coffee or nicotine. But there is one more strategy that has allowed me and hundreds of entrepreneurs and Fortune 500 executives to take their focus and performance to the next level and get work done 10 times faster than normal people. So watch this video here where I show you what it is, how it works, and how you can use it too to get more done next month than most people do all year.